Well, as someone who didn't play the Left Behind DLC, I figured I am the perfect person to review this episode, right? Let's get into it. Last week I had mentioned I had not played the DLC for The Last of Us called Left Behind, but I've seen enough of it to recognize the familiarities and the references, and realize that out of every episode, this one strays the least. If you've played this DLC, you've seen this episode. Not to say it isn't well crafted in its own right, but it definitely took the least amount of creative liberties when making this episode. For those that don't know, spoiler free, this episode is a flashback of the infamous day that Ellie was bitten. And out of every episode so far, this episode really shows that Bella Ramsey is a powerhouse talent, not to be trifled with. This girl is going places, man, and we're all wrong for doubting her. But does that mean this episode was without flaw, or even necessary? Let's find out in spoilers. This will be my quickest review because there isn't much to discuss. This whole episode, for the most part, is just one long drawn-out sequence. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I did. There's great moments here of laughter and tears. The show almost picture-perfectly recreates the events of Ellie and Riley tearing it up at the shut-down mall one night before Riley hits the open road with the Fireflies. Bella Ramsey and Storm Reid had a ton of chemistry portraying this dynamic duo. They really play off of each other quite well, and Bella specifically shows some great physical comedy and comedic timing in this episode. Staying on the positives here for a moment, the show also recreates some of the game's moments to an adorable extent. Like always, HBO has me oohing and eyeing every other second at the references and Easter eggs and recreations. This episode plays right out to the end of the story, where the two starry-eyed lovebirds are attacked by an infected and both bitten. Shady biscuits, bro. Aside from this flashback, there is two brief moments also lifted from the game of Ellie patching up Joel in a garage. I didn't totally understand the significance of this triggering her flashback. I didn't know if it was because she was thinking of other people she had lost, or if it was Riley saying, "We don't quit." I'm sure there was some kind of creative behind-the-scenes reason for this, but I don't think it's demonstrated very well on screen. But here we get to the point of the video where all the fanboys get mad. The negatives. This episode, though acted exceptionally well and as beautiful as ever, is another example of, but why? Now, there is an argument to be made for this one for sure. Unlike the other episode that shall not be named, the Left Behind flashback at least focuses on one of our heroes and does pay tribute to the main story, though it doesn't progress it. In the last episode, Ellie pours her heart out to Joel about losing people as well, and now we see what she means. Makes sense, right? Sure. But as its own thing, it's more of a meh episode. Not a lot happens, and the stakes are quite low. We know Ellie can't die. We already know Riley does die if you paid attention thus far. You spend the episode basically waiting for that other shoe to drop. And this could be used to build suspense, but I think this episode did drag its feet for too long. Time between the reveal of the infected and the infected finding them felt too long and kind of unbelievable. Like, they continue to play in the arcade, slam doors, even get into a screaming match before it even looks for them. But them finally playing music 15 minutes later, it shows up. And then, again, when the infected does attack, it was just a bit of a letdown. So far, this show, except for the bloater and the opening sequence, the action isn't very good. It's all pretty blandly choreographed and shot even worse, relying way too much on cutaways. And I said this in my first couple of reviews and hoping it would go away, and it just hasn't. The action's not the best. Though, as a fan, it was cool to see Ellie going ham with her fucking pocket knife. That was kind of sweet. Now, prior to this sequence, all the conflict in this episode was purely melodramatic, involving fights over politics and missing one another. And I get it. They're young, they're emotional, and they're drunk. In a show that has a man killing his younger brother, a father holding his bleeding out daughter, and the tragic life and death of an isolated couple, arguments about politics just don't really hold a candle. But for everyone who's about to get hostile in the comments, I did actually enjoy this episode. A fair bit, actually. I'm just trying to look at it from every angle and not have a biased opinion. Personally, I enjoyed the relationship of these two and the references to the game, and I found both of these young actresses did an outstanding job with the respective material. I just found this episode to be one of the weaker ones so far, which isn't like the worst insult, right? Like, it's like, asking what the worst Quentin Tarantino movie is. It's still great, but not every movie can be Pulp Fiction. However, I can't wait for next week's episode. We're getting into David territory, and that fucking trailer was amazing. Pumped for that. So like I said, this was a much quicker review because there wasn't as much going on in this episode to talk about. But what did you think? Did you agree with my review? Did you think this was the worst review of anything ever to be uploaded on the internet, and you just think I should leave the internet forever and just read books and never touch a computer again? If that's what you think, comment below and let me know, and I won't do that. All right, guys, thanks for clicking on my face. Again, if you enjoyed this content, maybe like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Everything is appreciated. See you next week for episode 8.